Alright, what's going on everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So in this one we are taking a look at Spider-Man 2099, the final card of the Spider-Verse season. This one is a 4-cost 6 power that reads, the first time this moves to a location, destroy an enemy card there. So is this one worth your 3,000 tokens, as this is another Series 4 dropping card, or should you hold on to the future? Maybe hope to get this in one of those fancy new caches that's going to be coming with the new system, potentially as early as next month. So 2099 is a really cool card. However, we got some clarification on how this card works, and unfortunately, the more we learned about the card, the worse it kind of seems. Now, when I read this card, as many other people did, I kind of thought that when you moved him to a location, if he hasn't been there before, his effect will trigger. So you have the potential to trigger him multiple times if it's the first time he's moving to that location. That is not how this works. How this works is this triggers one time. Exactly one time. The first time it moves to a location, it blows up an enemy card there. That is it. If you move it to a location it's previously not been to, if the effect already went off, it's not going to go off again. Even if you bounce it to your hand, it will not re-trigger. It goes off once, that is it. So I do think that made the card a bit more underwhelming compared to how people were initially thinking about using it. Maybe the other way would have been too OP. That's also certainly possible. But I do think the wording was a little bit confusing there, as I know I was not the only one who thought the card might work that way. We also got a little clarification that it cannot destroy a card that is face down. So it can only blow stuff up that is face up. That is going to make priority relevant potentially towards the end of the game, especially if you're planning on your opponent just slamming down a big thing like an evolved Hulk and you want to get Spider-Man into the lane to crush him. You have to make sure that you do not have priority, because if that Hulk is alone in its lane and hasn't been revealed yet, well, 2099 just isn't gonna hit it. So all that aside, is this card worth getting? I think if you're a move enthusiast, this is probably a pretty easy buy at 3k tokens. 3k is not the hardest thing to get together in the world compared to 6k for a card. And if you really like a move, I mean, this does seem like it's a card for you. You know, no longer have to run Shang-Chi in your move deck, which we have seen a few people doing recently. So maybe giving the move deck a bit of removal makes it worth it. If you're someone who generally doesn't play move or isn't overly interested in the move archetype, I think this one's probably a pretty easy pass. I think the only exception there would be if you really, really enjoy Zabu decks. This obviously gives you another 4-drop to toy around with in there, and that is definitely, I think, something worth experimenting with. Like, maybe you don't even need a full move deck. You can just make things work with 2099 with 1 or 2 move cards as kind of additional inclusions, rather than centering your whole deck around it. But I think that's mainly where he's going to be seeing play, is move decks or the occasional Zabu deck. So if that speaks to you, if you really like the character, or if you're really interested in the effect, which I do think is pretty good in spite of those interactions I just talked about, then 3k tokens probably worth taking a risk on. If you're not totally sure about this card, my advice always is give it a few days. Everyone's going to hype it up on day one and say, oh, it's the big meta breaker. But will that actually last after the first day or two? I think it is always helpful to kind of wait and see the initial reaction, what people are doing with it. If it actually starts to stand out as a strong card, or if it kind of falls by the wayside a bit. So that's my advice. If you're into move or if you're into Zabu decks, worth your consideration. Otherwise, either pass on it, save for something else, or just take the wait and see approach and see how the card ends up performing a few days after it releases. We're going to dive on into some decks here, though, for 2099 from Den. Article link in the description below if you want to check out any of the decks we're going to go over, as well as grab a code to easily import them into the game. First off here, we have the Good Cards Wave deck. This one is opting to do a lot of disruption things, from putting rocks in the opponent's deck to making their biggest thing in hand into a pig. We have a lot of different ways to interact with our opponent, and then Wave is a particularly important piece of interaction. as Bounce is one of the best decks in the game, and being able to limit their output on the final turn of the game is something that is very powerful to do. Heimdall is also super strong at the end of the game here. He's going to be the main way we're activating our 2 move cards in Dagger and Spider-Man 2099. Maybe we can even have some funny moments of Iron Lad copying 2099, play 2099 after, get Heimdall down, gonna blow up 2 things. Seems like a pretty good time. We have Doom, who even after the nerf is still kind of the best way to go wide post-wave on the final turn of the game. And Chavez is pretty important for our early game draw consistency, as this is a deck that is leaning very heavily on its 4-drops, so being able to draw Zabu early on in the game, having a higher chance at that, and being able to curve out Zabu into 4-drop, maybe even 4-drop plus 1-drop on 4, seems really, really appealing, so that makes Chavez worth the include. Then, as previously mentioned, Spider-Man 2099 is taking the Shang-Chi spot in a really interesting move list that just got posted the other day. This list is from Junkat and recently won a pretty big tournament, actually defeating the Lockjaw High Evo in the finals, so maybe it is time for Stegron to finally shine. Originally, Shang-Chi was in the 2099 spot, but I think 2099 will definitely be an interesting one to try out in this build, as he might be able to accomplish a fairly similar role of blowing up a big threat. But other than that, we are pretty much all in on the move stuff. The main things worth pointing out here, obviously Stegron, which is not normally a common include. However, I do think it has been an underrated card for a while. It's not the craziest card in the world, but I think people gave it a lot of crap, even though it wasn't really that bad of a card, probably because no one wanted to buy it for 6k tokens. That aside, the other really different include here from a lot of the other move decks is Magneto, who I think is a pretty cool inclusion, as anytime you have a deck that is obviously going to be a Heimdall deck, I think you gain a lot of points, especially in Conquest mode, with another powerful 6-drop, so you constantly have to put your opponent in the position of, hey, are they going to play Heimdall or Magneto, and which one am I going to play around? And a lot of times, it's very hard to effectively play around both of these cards. That said, Magneto will be a little riskier to be running tonight, as if other people are all trying out their 2099s, there's a chance Magneto ends up pulling one and might be met with his own demise. But that aside, I do think this is a really solid deck. I was really happy to see it put up some tournament results. And who knows, maybe someone will take this on a really solid Infinite Conquest run when that drops later tonight. And then we have a Surfer move control deck. So the idea with this is, instead of focusing on moving our stuff all over the board, we are going to be able to move our opponent's stuff over the board with things like Juggernaut, Polaris, and Arrow. We do still have ways to move our own stuff if we so desire with Iron Fist and Ghost Spider, and then just some solid 3-drops to round out the Silver Surfer style of deck in the mainstay Brood, obviously Surfer himself, Storm and Juggernaut combo, which is always very good in this style of deck, Killmonger to deal with those pesky 1-drops, and Polaris, who has been especially helpful in a post-Nebula world. I can't count the amount of times Polaris has been able to just yoink a Nebula out of a storm lane, so that's been super helpful. And Arrow's a really cool top end here, because I feel like a lot of people do not respect Arrow anymore because you just don't see it very often. So the element of surprise is on your side with her, especially in a deck where if they think you're going to be a Surfer deck, I think it's very unlikely they're going to be expecting Arrow on the second to last or the final turn. And there you have it. Those are day 1 Spider-Man 2099 decks. Again, link in the description to the article if you want to check out the decks or import them yourself. But I'm curious what you think about this card. Are you going to be picking this one up? I know there's a lot of hype around it because of the recent tie-in with the movie. I'm excited to try it out, even though I don't think he's going to be the best card in the world. I think he is going to be a lot of fun, and I really hope he has a cool animation, because a lot of the other Spider-Verse cards, like Ghost Spider and Silk, have been really cool with the animations, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what his looks like. So let me know what you think about this card in the comments below. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and stay tuned here on Marvel Snap Zone for all your Marvel Snap content. I'm Zombies, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.